Hey guys, it's Keeping It Real Estate with Brian and Joe. Today we're talking interest rates, and we have Greg Nouza here back again, and he's going to help us out and answer any questions that we need to know. So let's get into it. Greg, thanks for coming on again, man.
Going on, Greg?
Yeah, glad to keep it real with you guys. That is like the realest intro I've ever seen. I feel like I'm on the outside.
Right in your face.
Yeah, so me and Brian were talking. So like now that the interest rates, I feel like that's like the main question that everyone has is pretty much where's all this going, and like even like the importance of like interest rates and stuff like that, and see like pretty much at least get you on here, someone who's actually like in the know or that has like past experience with the stuff. You know what I mean?
Thank you. Yeah, thank you. So yeah, I had an idea what tonight's topic was, but I didn't entirely know. And like last time, I knew all the questions, and I think I had a lot of answers. But I think tonight's like theme is going to be how sometimes not knowing the answers is actually the best answer. You'll see what I mean. So like, if the question is what are the rates going up, this and that mean, let's get real. No one wants to see the rates go up. It's not good for you. Right. Or me as professionals, that just means customers paying more money, right? Because it affects their interest rates. Mm-hmm. And for the sellers, that means that maybe less people are interested in buying because the rates are going up, right? But you would think that means things slow down. Sometimes things speed up like a catalyst, because now everybody who's been sitting around being like, well, I'll just wait till rates go up. Now they're motivated. So like if you're trying to predict if things are going to speed up or slow down, we as professionals don't even know. It could be more, it could be less. And now we're coming into spring and so forth.
Yeah, we got the opinion.
So yeah, definitely. I mean, what's going to happen? We'll have to see. And
so like starting off, like probably like I want to say a year or two ago, rates are down to like 2, and I feel like that's the reason why everyone like jumped in the market, because they're trying to like take advantage of what it is. And now it's so like everyone's like, oh no, the interest rate's going back up. But like this is how it's, I don't know. This is like the rate it's at now is kind of like I feel like it's getting back to normal.
Right.
Because I mean, when I first bought my first home, my rate was, so I bought it about 4 or 5 years ago. My rate was 3.9, and I thought that was
rate. Yeah, that's a great rate. Yeah.
And then all of a sudden, everything's dropped down to 2, and I was like, oh, I should have waited. But it's pretty much that. It's like a waiting. Everyone's like, it's kind of like the stock market. When do you jump into it? But like,
right. Like, it's like everyone's sitting around saying, "Oh, rates are up." No. Rates are back. You know what I mean? It's like we had it really good for a while, but did we? I mean, some people were really struggling. Some people died. Some people got really sick. Other people had to work through a lot of adversity. Like I had clients working on the LIRR. Some people were in the emergency room working with COVID patients. So, I mean, sure, rates were good, but like the world was in chaos. So, I mean, I just feel like now things are settling and rates are still fine. I mean, when I started in the business, people were jumping up and down for 5.5%. This was in like 2002 because the rates were higher than that before that. So, I mean, and that's going to, so I'll put my philosophy on the table, but even before I do that, I mean, like, have you guys seen anything happening in your worlds with rates having gone up in the last couple of weeks on the real estate side?
I haven't heard anything, even from just talking with a bunch of people. Anybody say anything about the rates? It was more, when are the prices of the houses going to go down? It's
so interesting because everyone has their own focus, you know, and property taxes are always like the last thing to get noticed. Yeah. I had a couple of clients recently be like, oh, with prices going up, or if they go down, is that going to affect property taxes? I'm not even sure the answer on that one. I don't think so. But yeah, I mean, prices, everyone's waiting for that bubble to burst. But we've seen the memes, right? Where like it's like a skeleton being like, my client waiting for prices to drop.
Yeah, all the cobwebs around them.
Yeah.
Well, so I think it's you can wait forever, but like, when is the right time? No one knows.
Right. And are rates done going up? I mean, have we hit the top of it? I mean, all right. So just to give you some history from my vantage point, whenever I see rates go up, because it's happened a bunch of times, and it happens both directions. Sometimes like they'll go up or they'll go down. It happens without warning, and it happens kind of fast, like over. And not to mention, in my world, it's always like, okay, is it just a blip or is it a trend? In other words, rates are always going up and down, right? So one day we come into the office and the rates are like up a bit, like say 1/8%. So you're like, all right, cool. Like I'll wait a day or two before I lock in my next client, and you're waiting and they go up again. And the next day, and then the day after that, and you're kind of waiting, being like, all right, is this just a blip, or is it really going to continue to trend? And next thing you know, it keeps going up each day, and then it's up 0.5%, and it's gone. Like rates are up, and it happens fast, like within a week, and you just don't know. And it's funny because, all right, so every time I've ever worked for a company, and I've worked for a lot of them, I worked for like 12 banks, right?
Yeah.
Chase, Citibank, United. I'm at a company now called Nationwide, a whole bunch of them. Anytime a manager ever got on being like, yo, guys, lock in your rates. Rates are about to get worse. Everyone locks in. And then 3 days later, they're on a meeting explaining why the rates went down instead. Oh, we didn't realize that the economy in Greece was going to fall apart. It's like, we don't know. No one knows. And it's done the opposite from what we thought it was going to do so many times that I feel like it's unpredictable. And I think, and tell me how you guys feel about this. If people are making life-altering decisions, like I'm going to buy a house because rates are up or down, like that's maybe a reason to buy a stock or like a
Right.
comic.
Like you're in it for the long run at that point. Like you're buying
Right.
a house. Like you're not looking to buy that house now and then, obviously if you're flipping or whatever it is, but even if it's a flip, like interest rates aren't even like what you're even worried about. So like, yeah, you're right. In the long run, like, listen, there's a difference between if you get like an 8. If it jumps out for an 8, yeah, I would say, but like it's never gonna jump up like that much. It's never have.
Right. Like does someone say, "Oh, I'm gonna get married because hepatitis is down"? No.
Seems like a great time to start up. No, you're right. So this is only my own curiosity. Like, who increases it? Like, who sits there and decides, like, yo, 3.5 today?
Right.
Midday, bring it down a little bit.
Isn't that crazy? Like, there's someone with the button, right?
Yeah, that's what I'm trying to say. So, like,
they're like, it's the Fed, the Fed. But like, how do they figure that out? It's a good point. It's the guy who just refinanced yesterday, where he's done, and now he's like, rates are going to go up today.
Yeah, well, that was the thing. So me and my wife were talking about refinancing beforehand. We actually just refinanced our house a couple months ago, right? I think like maybe the end of the summer. And we went from a 3.9 to a 2.7, and we saved loads of money.
That's awesome.
I think my mortgage went from like 32 to like 27 or 28.
Wow.
Yeah, just by jumping on it. But like, we also, I guess, lucked out towards the end. You know what I mean?
Yeah. Well, that's awesome. And so it's an interesting point because I have clients where they're all full of these rules of thumb. So some people are of the opinion that like you need to drop 1%. So if you're at 3.5, you need to get to 2.5. And it's not a bad rule of thumb, but at the same time, I point out like there's more variables involved, and there's a bigger picture. And the bigger picture that I'm alluding towards is the percentage doesn't matter. It's all about the dollars. At the end of the day, like we don't open up a bank account or invest money to get a percentage. We do that to get money. And same thing with a mortgage. It's all about like, okay, how much is my payment going down versus what's it costing me? But I mean, I bring up the point. Say somebody has a $50,000 mortgage balance and they're at 4.5%, and they can drop their rate from 4.5 to 3.5. That person might not save money because the amount of cost involved, like the closing costs.
The closing costs is what
on a $50,000 mortgage might be more than what it's worth to increase that mortgage balance. You might not even see a reduction in payment because you're increasing the balance by 10 grand, which is significant. Or say you increase the balance by 15 grand. That's a good percentage of what you already owe. And therefore you may not see, you may need to drop 2% on that same balance to make it make sense versus say someone has an $800,000 mortgage and they can drop the rate 0.5%. They might end up saving $400 a month. And I'm inventing these numbers, but I mean, it's to present an idea. So that's kind of where like the rule of thumb to a degree, plays a role, but it also depends how long you're in the mortgage. So for example, if someone's in the mortgage a real long time, and this is something that a lot of people tuning in may want to be aware of. If you start out at arbitrarily 4%, and you're in that mortgage for 20 years, after 20 years, you're not paying 4% any longer because it's an amortizing loan. So over time, you're paying less and less. Yeah, let me get my hands here. You're paying less and less interest and more principal. So by the time you have 10 years left, if you did the calculations, you might be down to paying 2% interest. So to refinance that may make it feel like you're saving a lot of monthly if you stretch it back out to a 30-year term. But technically, you're really just stretching it out. And you may end up paying more over the life of the loan because now you stretch it out for 30 years and you put the rate at 3%. Meanwhile, you were at 2% after being in it for 20 years. Does that make sense? Like,
yeah, I didn't even know that. I didn't know that it actually dropped down like that.
Yeah, in fact, an amortization in let's get nerdy, it means it alludes to the word death, amorte, to die. And so what it's saying is that over time, the loan's actually dying. Yeah, you're paying less and less interest over time. So if you look at your monthly statement for your mortgage, everybody, every single month you'll see the same payment, but a little bit more goes towards the balance and a little bit less goes towards the interest, even though it's the same rate. Over time, each payment is going a little bit differently.
But do you see more people refinancing after 20 years, or are they doing it more after like 4 or 5? Because you see, like, the more people that I'm talking to, they're refinancing it now since the rates dropped. They're lowering it, but they're going from like a 4.1 to like maybe like a 3.1 or a 3.
Yeah,
and they got the big loan like a year ago.
I know you're saying the rates, but like, what's worth it at that point?
What's what?
What would be like worth it? Like how you're saying beforehand, like that's when I guess the numbers come about.
Yeah. So different strokes, different folks, right? And there's different reasons for people to refinance. So I'll just share with you, I've had it all different ways. I've had clients that actually took higher interest rates when they refinanced, not because they wanted to, but because there still was a benefit and it accomplished their goals. And in those particular instances, it meant them taking out additional equity from the home to consolidate high interest credit card debt. So for example, someone who had 3.5% interest rate, but they were able to consolidate $50,000 worth of credit cards that were at 15-20% interest, and now suddenly maybe they're at 4% instead of 3.5%. I still say people say $1,000 a month on their cash flow, and that makes sense for that particular customer. Or say a client that has 3.5% and say rates are still flat 3 years later, but they want to do home improvements, they want to put in a pool, whatever. They might pull 50 grand in equity from the house, and that still makes sense for them. So for the people who are pulling cash out, it's less rate sensitive because it's more about the total budget or their specific goals for their household. As far as just what's called a rate and term refinance, where all you're doing is just trying to either save money on your on the mortgage payment itself, or what you can also do is say someone's in a 30-year term, right? And say they're really comfortable with their payments, where they're even paying more every month. They might jump into a 20-year or a 15-year and crunch down the amount of years they have left. And maybe the monthly payment stays the same, but they've cut off a good amount of time back. And not to mention, they're going to accelerate their payoff. So even though
it stay the same if you squeezing it together and consolidating it
though. So say I have a monthly payment of $3,000 a month, and I'll finish that in 25 years.
Okay.
And I have it at 4%. Now say I refinance down to 3%, but instead of finishing it in 25 years, now I can take a mortgage for 20 years, and it cuts off 5 years off the back end of that mortgage, but I still have the same payment.
Is it sorry to cut you off, is when you jump down from like a 30-year to a 15 or 20-year, whatever it is, does the rates normally drop down also with that shorter loan, or they stay the same?
So let's just say, for example, that we just look at it in a vacuum, like in a bubble, right? You're always going to find a slightly lower rate for a 20 compared to a 30. And usually when you go from a 20 to a 15, it is really more where you see a bit of a drop.
Yeah.
But even lately I've seen, and when I say lately, I'm talking like the past 2-3 years, I haven't seen it as big a difference as I used to. And again, this is me speaking from my opinion. So some other people may say different, but I think the reason is because rates have been so low, right? There's different ways that banks make money on refinances. They'll either make it through the closing costs themselves, which is where they're just looking to refinance, where we see rates going down, down, down. People are refinancing, or they make money off the interest over the life of the loan. Now, over the past, 10, 15 years, I've seen where they incentivize 15 years, 20 years. The idea being if that person can pay off the loan faster, the bank gets their money faster and there's less risk for the bank. But now where rates are so ungodly low, the servicing game is now what's in play, where I think the banks want to hold on to that paper because they don't expect, like if say you refinance at 2.75, when are you ever refinancing that loan again?
Yeah, you
Never.
Extremely
That's too low.
unlikely, right? So they're going to dangle that carrot at me and like, hey, listen, now that I know you're in a 30-year loan and likely to never refinance, I want to make that payment not only really comfortable, but why not stretch it out for 30 years? We'll make more money on you than seeing you pay it off in 20 or 15 years. So that could be part of the game. And now I'm more talking theory in these boardroom meetings with the guy that flips the switch. I don't know.
Conspiracy theories?
How would you
Yeah.
how would you push it towards, and what would you suggest, say, first time home buyers do? Where
Yeah. So
would it be
so
more
this is my
30-year,
so,
20-year, or
yeah. So this is my advice that goes back to the beginning when I said sometimes having no answers is the best answer.
Mhm.
Here's the answer. We don't know what the market's going to do. We don't know what our lives are going to do. I mean, some of my clients say, oh, what if I lose my job? This and that's like, okay, great. If you lose your job, you can't pay your rent either. Whether you have a mortgage or rent or whatever, like life is all about risk. And if you don't take risk, you're not living. So get real. Like at some point we have to make a move. We can't stay at mom and dad's house forever. So my big point that I really would love to get to is we all as consumers have to make a decision in a bubble, in a vacuum, in the here and now. Like whether it's a refinance where we can take cash out and consolidate some debt, or we're hoping to try to get a lower interest rate, or we're possibly looking to buy a home, you got to make a decision on what's right in front of you and what the market has in store. Because guess what? Prices could go down, prices could go up. Rates could go down, rates could go up. So we don't know. So if we can find a house that we like, where the money that we need to buy it is affordable to us, and the monthly payment works, then what are you waiting for? Because it might not work tomorrow. And to answer your question about, well, should they do a 15, a 20, or a 30? My answer to that is even 15 years is a pretty long time. So to force ourselves into the box of a 15-year term, and God forbid that becomes uncomfortable within those 15 years, did it make sense to take a slightly lower rate? In my opinion, you'd be better off just taking a 30-year term. There's no prepayment penalties on primary residences. So you can always overpay the loan. If someone wants to pay the loan off in 15 years and they took the 30-year term, great, do that. But I feel like unless you just got gobs of money, a 15-year term, in my opinion, might be a little tight. I personally have come to see that the consumers that take 15-year mortgages are typically people who are on their second or third home. Maybe they sold their large home. The kids moved off to college. Now they're downsizing into like a condo, stuff like that, where people are like, listen, like I'll just take a 15-year term. And again, I'm
paid off quickly anyway, so it'll be all right.
Yeah, but that's the best advice I can give any consumer, because everyone's like, their minds are blowing up and their heads are spinning because we don't know what to look at as a first-time home buyer, because the media spins us. It's like rates are up, rates are down. We feel like the world's falling apart. It's like, guess what? A quarter of a percent means you're paying an extra $40 a month. Like, can you now not afford your house?
I mean, when does the media ever come on the news and say like, a good thing?
Yeah,
like, no.
Yeah, right.
How does it work with buying down the rate?
So that's where you're paying extra in closing costs to achieve a lower interest rate, and that's called points.
Yeah, that's what it's like, point system. But now, like, so what I've been hearing is like, oh yeah, no, if you pay for a point, how much is a point? Like, is there like a set amount of like how much a point is, or just
absolutely, yeah. So paying 1 point is in fact where you are paying 1% of your loan amount in fees. So say you're taking out a mortgage for $300,000 and you pay 1 point, you're paying $3,000. Exactly. Like that. That's exactly how it works. Now, the next question that may come across is, okay, well, what does paying 1 point do for me on the interest rate?
Yeah.
Right.
And that's where it's not an even scale. So like on some days it might do more for you than others. And in general, you can keep going down. You could pay 2 points, 3 points. 1 point usually I would say may lower the interest rate by say 0.5%. But if you keep going, it's not like you keep paying points and suddenly you have a 0% interest rate. No, it's got like usually like a sweet spot.
Free.
Yeah.
Right. So like after you go down far enough, it'll be like you pay another point and your interest rate doesn't go down by anything or like a tiny bit. It's just not worth it. Yeah.
Yeah, because that was always my one question, was like with the points, it was like, is it even worth it to dish out the money to lower the rate? But now, so would home buyers be able to come to you and pretty much, would you be able to, like, is it possible to map it out before them jumping into like doing these plans and say, listen, this is how, if you do this rate on this house, this is how much your monthly mortgage is going to be. Like, that could be like just plain and simple, like right in front.
Yeah, I mean, let me ask you guys, even as real estate agents, like when you think of what the notion of a pre-approval letter is, like what's your guys' thoughts on that? Like, what is a pre-approval letter to you guys?
You want to do?
They're good to buy the home if push came to shove.
I think it's just here's a pat in the back. Good luck.
Wow.
You don't know.
I was more the optimistic.
What the hell's going on? It's I make $4.6 million a year, and I actually own part of Amazon, and my wife owns half of Sloan Kettering. So we're good. We're good.
Well, that's like heartbreaking almost as a lender to hear that, because to be honest with you, I mean, a pre-approval letter really should be where someone did their due diligence. But like, all right, so I'm going to deconstruct and reconstruct. A pre-approval letter, in my mind, is not something that we hang on the fridge or that we should conceive as for the listing agent or for the seller. And it's not something where we should use a universal figure either. Where, for example, like all the time, like whether it's a realtor or a buyer, where they're like, they're pre-approved up to 500,000. That is a horrible way to present that, because different houses have different property taxes. So if one house they're pre-approved up to where the taxes are say 10 grand, on another house say the taxes are 13 grand, but the price is still 500,000, they won't qualify for that house. So like really bad, in my opinion, to just present it as like a one size fits all pre-approval. All right, so I've deconstructed it. To reconstruct it, I look at the pre-approval letter as almost more for the buyer than for the listing agent and for the seller. Yes, it's needed when you present an offer, and that helps convey that the lender has done their due diligence. But the listing agent doesn't even know how well I've done my due diligence. It's just red tape to allow them to say, okay, at least the person's spoken with the bank.
They barely look at it. I feel like they look at it more. Like, I know when I look at it, I look more at how much they approve for.
Right.
Like, is it going to be able to cover the cost of what I'm selling the house for?
Right.
And that's it.
And let's hope that they looked at the taxes when they did that.
Yeah.
And that they collected all the documents.
And
right?
Like you said, like if it's before and you got a pre-approval January 1st, you've seen 4 different houses. Now all of a sudden it's February 15th. How do you know that pre-approval is still good for this one?
How long is it even like usually good for? Like 3 4
Yeah,
months?
I mean, usually it's like 4 months, but
yeah.
But that's when the credit report expires, so you'd have to run a new one typically. Yeah, right. So the way I explain it to my clients is like this: the pre-approval I look at is more for us to build a sandbox built off of their financial information, meaning their income, their credit, of course, their employment, their debt to income ratio, how much money they're working with, and that way within that sandbox, once we know all their variables, when they go and look at different properties, we plug those numbers in and build different models of what the payment would look like and how much money they're going to need. So like, it's terrifying to hear that it's like, okay, like, should a customer know the numbers? Like, that's in my mind a really sad reality, where if customers are going and looking at houses with the idea that, okay, I'm pre-approved, but they don't know what the payment would look like on a particular house when they go to look at it, that's no good. So just to share with you, I agree with you. Like, I've been to open houses as a loan officer, And I'll meet the people at the door. I'll be like, hey, do you know what the payment would look like on this house? And they're like, no, I don't know. It's like, how can a loan
I don't
officer
think
let a client go out and
anybody
do
knows.
that?
I don't think
Like,
anybody
just,
knows. Like,
that's what I'm saying. I feel like that's something that like everyone, like you said, everyone's too focused on the interest rate and how much the interest rate is, and no one's really looking at like the actual taxes on the property, what other dues go into the properties, and then at the end of the month, like how much your actual monthly payment's going to be.
That's right.
yeah, I
That's
get
right.
almost every buyer that I've dealt with after we've seen the house has always asked, well, what do you think the payment's going to be? And like in the back of my head, I'm just like, probably the wrong time to sit here and ask that right now.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Like you said, like if you do all of this stuff and you check everything and then you send them out and you do it at every single house, I feel like you're a step above everybody else because nobody else is doing that. Because I can literally get on the phone right now and probably have pre-approval within the next 15 minutes and not send anything over and not know what the payment is, just nothing, and just give them some whatever fluff number and let it be done. But it's
Right.
good because I'd rather you're not wasting our time if you got pre-approved for $700,000 and now you want to go see a $700,000 house, not knowing that the payment's gonna be $4,000 or $5,000.
Hmm.
And
Right.
when you see a $4,000 or $5,000, you're like, holy shit.
Right. I mean, let's even agree as professionals to be able to go and show a property to a customer where they walk into the house knowing the numbers work. If they like the house, we're in the kind of market where you can't wait 3 days for
No.
them to figure out whether they want it. Right.
Yeah,
You
come
gotta
on.
make that offer pretty much on the spot. So why have that client walking around the house being like, all right, like I think I like it, but I don't know if the numbers are gonna work. That's no good. Like they have to know walking in the door the numbers are gonna work. So they can focus on looking at the house in a clear state.
So,
Mhm.
Greg, you would recommend? I'm not putting words in your mouth, but like you'd recommend being the fact of like not only just getting a pre-approval and like getting a letter saying how much you're ready, but to take that extra step and be like, listen, how much money can I spend on a house when it comes to also putting the fact of like how much of the property taxes? Like, can you guys do that like from the beginning?
Yeah, 100%. I mean, I'll put it this way: the loan that comes after the pre-approval is really just an extension of the pre-approval itself. At least that's my philosophy.
Mm-hmm.
Because at the end of the day, there's no mysteries. I mean, I know what the taxes are up front. I can look it
Right.
up on MLS. As far as the price goes, let's agree, whatever it's listed for, it's probably going to sell for more. So right out of the gates, I'll usually have my customer agree that we should add, say, 10 to 20 grand on top of whatever that is, maybe even more. So that way we're
Right.
prepared. I mean, it's not like we don't know what the rates roughly are. So I'll work off, a worst case scenario. And yeah, we can work up all the closing costs. We go over the full budget and they're ready to go. Like they know the numbers are going to work. And I look at it too, say that they didn't know the numbers and they fell in love with the house, right?
Yeah.
And then they go back to me and they're like, oh, I think I want to make an offer. Oh, the numbers don't work. How difficult does that become for that client to then continue to look at other properties
Yeah. They
that
waste
are
their
now
time.
less? They don't
Yeah.
compare. They're
Yep.
still in love with that first house that didn't work. It becomes really hard. So like numbers first. They should. And here's the crappy part. No one wants to talk about numbers. That's the scary part. We'd rather just go and look at a house, see if we can imagine ourselves waking up and go and have a cup of coffee in the kitchen.
It's funny you said that. So like my wife and I, when we were first looking for homes, the first home we saw was in Seaford, and she fell in love with the house, like completely. She was like, I want this house, whatever it is, right? And the house was going for like, I think 550 or something like that. So we put in an offer, we tried lowball, we didn't know what we were doing. And they came back and was like 600 to 620 at the time. Like we couldn't afford that. And like you said, she was crushed. She was like, "Oh, I really like this house." I'm like, "This is the first house we're looking at." I was like, "You gotta give this is the first one. We're gonna have a long route." So I was like, "There's other ones, so don't worry about it." But like, I didn't even think like what you were saying. I didn't even think about that. Like, not just pre-approval. Like, you can go into something knowing what your monthly payments are gonna be. And
100%.
it's more of like an open mindset. Now you're like, all right, I love this house, and I already know that what my monthly rate's going to be is going to get. Because that's exactly what you need to know. You know what I mean? If you could do it, if you're gonna be saving money, if even this comes to like when it comes to like rental properties, if you're talking about like cash flow, because that's the thing for like another podcast. But like if you're
Sure.
talking about like cash flow and stuff like that, like that's huge. Like yes,
Right.
you have a better rate than someone else or a worse rate than someone else. But if your interest rates, if your your taxes are lower and your monthly payments are less, you're making more money than the other guy. So
Right.
that's something that everyone should actually take note of.
It's like you don't shop for a Porsche 911 when you have 3 kids you need to fit in the back. You know what I mean? Like you got to be practical and make sure it all
I mean,
works.
it would be tight,
Yeah,
Two in
I mean,
front.
it does have some people.
It's always trunk space.
But I mean, from your guys' end, when say you show a client a property, and the client's like, yeah, like I think I want to make an offer, but I got to find out the numbers. Like, does that happen a lot?
Yeah. Yeah. A lot. I usually try and do it on my phone just to give them a roundabout what it's
That's
going
what
to
I said. Like
be and like
waste
a
of money.
realization of this is how much it is. And you see that face right off the bat, whether it's like,
That's so crazy.
like, all right.
But that's an easy problem to solve, and that's where my clients are instructed. Hey, you're going out. Text me the address of anything you're looking at. Let's crunch the numbers in advance. If the numbers don't work, why are we going to look at it? And that way they know. Like you got to come in ready to make an offer where you know the numbers work, and it's just a matter of making sure that the rest of the house works. And it's funny too, because like I'll talk to some clients, they're first time buyers or they got pre-approved by another bank or whatever, and they'll be like, we only want to go up to 700,000 or whatever the number is.
Yeah.
And then the funny part is where I'm like, okay, that's great. Like, what payment do you want to be at? And they're like, I'm not really sure. And so like when you think about it, like then where did 700,000 come from? It's arbitrary. Like what does that even mean?
All they
'Cause it's
see
not
the 700,000 and
The
they
down
see the
payment.
house. They see this amazing house because that's what I want. That's what I can get.
right.
I'll worry about the payment after. But I see a $700,000 house and this is what I want. And you start living out of your means. Then we go back to 2008 where everybody's just falling off because now they just can't afford anything. Because they just decided to go over the head.
So, Greg, in like your past experience, right? Like, so how long have you been doing lending?
About 20 years. Yeah.
So
20 years.
in the past like 20 years, right? Have you seen anything that's remotely like this that has ever happened? Where like the rates fluctuating like crazy like this? Like, is it a pattern or is it like this is abnormally?
Yeah. I mean, I'll share with you. I didn't really see the rates fluctuating. I mean, they kind of just like in a matter of days, they just took a crap. They jumped. And they've been kind of sitting there pretty stable. A lot of people are like, oh, the rates are going up. I'm like, no, they did it. They're up and that's it. But they're not horrible either. I mean, I'm still quoting people in the 3s, which is historically low. But to relate to other instances like this, I mean, I've seen it a number of times. I remember it happening, I think in like maybe 2016, 2017, where like it went down to, I think like the like high 4s or like, I'm sorry, high 3s, low 4s. And then it like crept back up again to like 4.5. And like in general, it doesn't change the overall nature of my business because people still need to sell houses. People still need to buy houses. People will always need money to pay bills. So, I mean, the world continues to revolve. And that's why I try not to let people stress too much about the rates because it's a lot of noise. Like it sells newspapers and it gets the media going and stuff like that. But again, it's like, should a couple bucks in either direction change the way that your winds are blowing? Personally, I feel like that. And what's interesting, I've seen the opposite of this market. So in 2008, when the market fell apart and prices were sky high, not so different. Like it was a buildup to kind of like what we have now, where we're waiting on this bubble to burst. It did burst, and values dropped like crazy. But it was interesting because there was a point right before that where no one was able to sell their house and prices were super high. And what's weird is like right now prices are super high, but like people can't wait to pay whatever they can get. Like it's still a super seller's market. But at that time, sellers were like giving cars away. They were willing to pay people's a year of taxes for people. Like it was crazy. And like, I'm trying to figure out even why it's still such a seller's market now when prices are so high. And I guess it's just demand, but like, why do so many people need to buy houses now
I think
versus
it,
then where it
I
was
think
like
it's more,
crickets were chirping?
I think it's more of like a fear thing. Like you said, like
Yes.
everyone's getting put in their head, like rates are going high. You gotta jump in now. 'Cause if you don't jump in to get a house right now, your rate's gonna be through the roof and you're gonna be paying forever.
And I don't remember what the rates were at that time, but I definitely remember where people were waiting for prices to drop. Like that was a big thing where like they knew the bubble was here, and that's where they're like, screw it, like I'm not going to buy right now. But I mean, I feel like just the lines being so long for people to even look at open houses, I feel like that's not going to happen. Like a seller can still get their price.
It's kind of like, and then I'm going to get in trouble for this. When girls go online and they see that coupon that comes up, and it's like 30% off on the coupon.
Yeah.
And they originally go on like, oh, I was going to get a shirt and a pair of pants. But because it's 30% off, I need 45 shirts, 13 pairs of pants, 2 jackets.
Why not take advantage of it?
$875 later, but I saved $400.
Yes. Yes.
That I love hearing. I spent $375, but I saved $115.
And then you know what? You're in the wrong if you address it. If you like,
oh yeah, 100%.
Hold on, you're telling me you spent like $1,000 on clothes?
And you asked,
but I just saved.
I saved like
400. Are you kidding me?
And well, what did you go on there first to get? Just a shirt. Just a shirt.
Yeah, like can we put that in the bank account? That money? Can we put that in the bank account somehow?
Yeah. I'm like, all right. And the packages, just ding ding, just 1, 2 packages, another package, another package, another package. You're like, Jesus Christ.
You know how many mystery boxes we have floating around our house right now? Like unopened Amazon boxes where like I'm like, I think this one's a shirt, but it's from like 3 months ago. I don't know.
Yeah, I had so for like Christmas time, all the boxes are online. So my wife, at one point, I was getting boxes literally every day. But now what sucks is like recycling comes around, and I'm the one who has to rip up all these boxes and put them all together. It was like every week.
Yeah,
it won't work for me. She's like, it was easier though. I'm like,
yeah,
you're right.
Yeah, the box fairy just comes along and makes them go away, right?
Yeah, throw them out the window.
Yeah,
like I feel like it's just like that. The same as I think. Like they see the interest rates are low. I need to get it now. I need to spend $750 and $750,000, and that house that I want that's $650. I need to pay $685,000 for.
Right.
I need it now.
It's very
save $50,000.
Yeah, it's true. I mean, I get texts from clients, and I can't gender stereotype, but I mean, it's like, you know, to a certain degree, it is the spouse, you know, and it's, you know, where are rates, and I let them know the rates are in my computer. That's where the rates are. Mm-hmm. That's a joke. The rates are in my computer.
And laugh here.
Yes.
No, I mean, you know what it is? So again, this is going real conspiracy, but like, again, I just feel like everything is all about fear, and they want you to like just jump into stuff just because they have this panic mode they put into everyone. And that was like one of the main reasons we want to talk about this today. So like, just to know, like, it's not just like interest rate is just like that. You know what I mean? Like, you gotta look at like the broader picture and not just worry about like, oh my God, people say I wanted to pay forever. No, just talk to someone that actually knows the business. Talk to Greg. You know, talk to like, just reach out to people. That's it. Just ask questions. If you don't know anything, ask questions.
I couldn't agree more. I mean, granted, obviously, I'd love to help anyone who could use the assistance, but it doesn't have to be me. But to not talk to someone who can help with the numbers, I really think is putting the cart before the horse. You got to know the numbers. Everything follows suit from there. The only thing I will say is sometimes it's where they'll talk to a loan officer. They'll be like, oh, I want my payment to be $2,500 a month. And I'm like, that's kind of low. Like, we're in Long Island. Houses are not selling for $250,000 anymore. Like, that may not be where it puts the payment. And I know that I'm going to have to put them back in touch with a real estate agent, where your challenge as the realtor is going to be to find them something that actually arrives at that monthly payment, where like the inventory is not going to have as low a payment or as low a price as it would have in the past to get them there. So that's sometimes the challenge. And I'll tell you, a conversation that I have with some frequency with customers is helping them come to terms with accepting a payment that might have been higher than what they were expecting. And it's not me trying to like force a pill that someone doesn't want to swallow. I mean, at the end of the day, someone's going to do or not do whatever they think is comfortable, but it is resetting or recalibrating expectations to some degree, where people were expecting the payment to be a little lower. And again, that's the combination of maybe rates going up a little bit, but it's more the fact that, yeah, a house that was selling $350,000 for 2 years ago is now selling for $500, for $550, and your payment might be in the 3,000s instead of the high twos. So, I mean, in general, that's a conversation I have with people sometimes, but it is what it is. I mean, if you need a house, my suggestion is, yeah, stop contributing to your 401k for a few years. You're still putting money into an investment. A house is still a way of growing your money. It's not like you're blowing it on some video games. No, like it's a real asset. That house that you may be looking at buying, I'm talking to you, whoever you may be in the world watching this video. Whatever your house that you're looking to buy is worth today, think about what it was worth 30 years ago. And now think about what it might be worth in 30 years from now. So if it means you pulling money from your 401k or taking a loan against 401k or not contributing as much towards your savings to get into a house nowadays, that's okay. We're talking about a long-term investment. You're investing in a glacier, not a volatile thing. So you'll get your money back. And if it means getting a house out of it, what's the alternative? To pay sky-high rent? No, you're paying 100% interest when you're paying rent. At least here you're only paying, something in the threes. Not that bad if you ask me.
Yeah,
Yep.
that's something actually. So like funny you said that. I actually took out a 457 loan, which is similar to like 401k. I don't know. Do police like
Thrift
other than
savings
cops,
plan, right?
what happened?
Deferred
I think
comp.
that's a
Deferred comp.
thrift comp. There you go.
Other than cops, like do people actually get 457? So or is that just a police thing?
I think it's a city thing.
City. So since I got on the job, I was putting 15% into my account, right? Money, like, I didn't even think about it. I just put it in. That was it. So I ended up taking out while I'm waiting for it. Deferred comp loan. Same thing you were just saying, like take out a loan or like don't put as much money into your 401k. And
Right.
my goal right now, and see how it is. And obviously, the market's crazy, but just if you don't even look at all, you're never gonna find anything. So my goal is to try to find something I could rent out, and actually, and like I said, like everything about cash flow and trying to know like how much your monthly payments will be, and then that's my plan. So it's funny
Right.
you brought that up.
Right. Yeah. A lot of people are looking at short term where they're like, oh, what are values? What's it going to be worth in 5 years? Let's just all agree that unlike a stock, I can guarantee as a loan officer that whatever you buy the house for now, in 30 years, you will have nothing owed on it as long as you stick with the plan. So whether that house is higher or lower in terms of price, if someone's trying to buy an investment property, for example, like what you're talking about, and if it's for rent, like if you're just going to rent it out, who cares? As long as your tenant is paying you enough to cover the mortgage payment and maybe put a little extra money in your pocket, guess what? They're paying your mortgage off for you every month. And that's great. And just let that ride. Now, if someone's trying to do a short term where it's like a flip or something like that's a little more sensitive. I guess that's where you got to watch the numbers a little more. But things to think about.
Yeah, no, that's pretty much what my mindset was. So it's pretty much. I mean, you can do all your research on it and everything. I feel like everyone has like their different ideas of how to do with, purchasing homes and stuff like that. But again, it's whatever works for you. So like, we can come out here, we can talk about it, but at the end of the day, you got to come up with your own numbers. You got to talk with the professionals, the guys that are actually in the business, and come up with an idea of what works best for you and your family. If you're happy, then everyone's happy.
That's super important. I think for every customer, the focus is something a little different. I mean, some people, it's all about the payment. But for other people, the real tight squeeze is how much money they have to come up with to get into the house. Or for other people, it's the logistics of the home, certain things about the layout of the house. Does it have a pool or the yard or whatever? And I think that's where everybody's different. And to our point earlier, it's all about being in a vacuum. Like you got to make your decisions on the properties that are available right now. And especially if someone has an urgency to buy, like their rent is coming or their lease is ending, then you got to make your best decision based on the cards in front of you. And sometimes the answer is don't do anything. You don't have to make a play. And some people get so emotionally attached to the house they're looking at that they go bananas because they love it too much. But we got to remember, this house is coming. It's slower, but there's always going to be that next house that comes up on the market.
There's another fish in the sea.
That's it. What are some, like as real estate agents, what are some of the things that you think are most important to a seller when they're trying to decide between 10, 15, 20 different offers from different buyers? How do they figure out which buyer to accept? I mean, they can't all be that different with the offers, right?
Sometimes the offers are a little different. I personally like to see who is more of a stable buyer. Because the last thing that the owners want to do, because a lot of times the owners, they are selling because they have to buy. So if the seller's end gets held up because the buyer isn't good and they falter and they can't go through with it, they're going to lose out of the house. So I try and break it down more. The money thing, obviously you try and get the most amount of money for your client, but you also want to be able to close, because having a number on a piece of paper with the highest number does nothing until you get to the closing table.
Yeah.
So it's usually trying to find that the solid buyer as much as you can by looking at it, who you kind of feel is going to be the one that's going to go through the whole process. Good.
So based on a pre-approval letter, what information is on that letter, or how do you figure out who is the most stable?
It's more, it could be off the pre-approval letter somewhat. Pretty much the company we look at and see how the company is, if we dealt with them in the past.
Dealt with them before that was like negative, a bad taste. You left a bad taste in your mouth. Now
the company meaning the mortgage company.
Yeah. And then I mean, I guess it's one thing that sometimes if I know that my sellers need a solid buyer to move on, I'll request financials from the buyer to give to one of the mortgage guys to look over and make sure that we know that it's solidified and that they're good. Because I don't do that. I don't know about it. But all I do know is that from even being a cop, you get a gut feeling. And I've learned to trust the gut feeling. And if I get a bad gut feeling, then I'm gonna let it known. And I need to see documentation to make sure that I can prove it.
Yeah, we're actually just talking about that before, me and Brian. It's pretty much, it goes based off like your instinct, to be honest. So it's like, everyone has that. So just pretty much how it is.
Yeah. Do you ever find people get like I don't know if the word's offended or if they resist the idea of showing you the financials, where they're like, I already showed that to my loan officer. Like,
if you resist, then we go on to the next one.
Then it's not.
If you're going to give me that much of a problem now,
yeah, that's a huge red flag.
I don't want to deal with it later.
Sure.
You guys think of like, listen, the ball's in your court. So like, if the guy's like that already being a pain in the beginning, there's other ones that are going to be coming about.
Exactly. So you figure your fiduciary duty is to your seller, not to your buyer, because they're not my client. It's to the seller. So I don't care whether or not I offend you or not. If you want this house, I need to make sure that you're legit.
Right. You're going to go by the rules.
You just become another fly-by-the-night buyer. And there's hundreds of them out there. For every time you tell me no, there's going to be 3 other people that are like, yeah, no problem.
That's pretty much that.
I think that's the right approach. That's the right way. And I experienced that on my end too as a loan officer, believe it or not. Like you would think that, all right, so I compare loan officers to doctors sometimes, because we're dealing with sensitive and private information, right? So sometimes I have to see people, all somebody's goodies in order to understand where it puts them in terms of their social security number and looking at their credit and stuff like that. And like sometimes people don't want to show it But I mean, not so different from you. It's like, well, why? If you're not willing to show it now, then something's wrong. Like we're gonna have to look at it sooner or later anyway. So if it's good, why wouldn't you show it? And if it's not good, then then what are we doing here?
Exactly.
Like there's we don't anybody got time for that.
Like you're not buying a PlayStation off me.
Right.
Like you're getting a house.
You're getting a house.
Right.
Okay. You're getting a house from my client who's lived there for years, who's trying to get another house. And if you're going to be this shady and going to be this much of a problem, again, like you said, it's the market. There's the other people on the line down the road.
Right.
Somebody else will have no problem doing it.
There's a lot of mistake with it. You know what I mean? Like, guy wants because, like, I feel like there's been multiple times that a deal didn't go through, the mortgage couldn't get it, and now all of a sudden your sellers who've been waiting now at this point, what, 3-4 months, are now they're the ones who's getting screwed out of it because this guy's like, all right, well, I couldn't get the mortgage, whatever. But then you have the sellers that actually have like their lives being set up and trying to figure out where they're going after this, if they got to move after this. They're trying to schedule it around you. Now, if you can't get the mortgage because for whatever reason, like Brian was saying, your obligation is towards your seller. So,
absolutely. You mind if I ask you guys another question? Just because it comes up sometimes on my end.
Go for it.
Yeah. All right. So, so say that the best and highest offer, so to speak, is somebody who is in need of selling a property. How much does that hurt their offer? Where they'll pay you the most, but they have to sell their own home, and that means possibly waiting on that to go through.
I mean, my own thought is like so again, you're competing with, especially now, you're competing with a lot of other people that are going to be putting their offers in, right? So now, like you just said, there's lines going out the door, down the block to get into these open houses. I mean, you got to think there's at least going to be a couple offers on the table. So now, me as a seller, if I'm trying to sell my home, not trying to sound mean, but why am I going to waste my time with someone who, yes, they're going to give me an offer, but with the contingents of they have to sell their home. So why would I worry about that if I can go with this guy who doesn't have that, even if it's a little less that they're offering, it's a guaranteed thing.
Right. It's a guarantee. There you go.
Plus,
more of a guarantee.
You run into the problem if you have a seller that needs to buy a house. And they get a buyer for the home. I've dealt with this before. I'm just dealing with it now. And they need to buy a house, and you have another buyer for their home that comes in that's like, I got to sell a home to buy this home also. If that buyer screws up and something happens where that does not go through for your seller, everybody needs to understand, every agent needs to understand is that when your seller puts money down on a home, and then that buyer puts money down on their home, if everything does not align, they're losing it all. Like that's what I think a lot of people forget is that you're putting $20,000, $30,000 down on a home. Okay. If you can't get the house because your buyer for your home faults and doesn't get the house at all, you're going to lose that money. Then what are you going to do next? Like if that was money that's been saving up to buy a house and now it's gone, they need to go through litigation to get it back now, which could be months. How are you going to get the house?
Right. And honestly, that all comes about with people don't really truly know what they could be getting because you would have mortgage lenders that take shortcuts that would just be like, I guess like the lazy way out of it and be like, yeah, you're good with this. But if they're not actually putting their homework into it, then like you get problems like this and you're hurting everybody.
Right. So I guess the name of the game, tell me if you agree, is if you're going to sell your property and try to buy a new one, it's probably good to try to sell your house first and try to find a place to live in the meantime, and then go find something to buy.
That's always if you have the opportunity to do that. Not everybody does, but if you have the opportunity to do that, that's probably the best route because it won't even be that long of a term of staying in a rental because you figure if you know that you're going to get the house sold if it gets to the point where you get the clear and everything else. And figure even if it's a 2 weeks, 3 weeks after that. If you've been looking at houses and you put that money down, you figure you will only be in that rental for maybe 2 or 3 months. Because you'll have the money from you sell your house. It'll be there and set and done. And you could use it to get the other house, which already has a deposit on, that you put the bid on, that you want, that you go forward and everything else. It's when it's hard when it's got to all line up correctly. And that's where that whole you got to be you got to be a dick almost.
Yeah.
You
So
know?
it's funny because it sounds to me like you go from being the lowest on the totem pole to now being the strongest buyer in the stack.
Yeah.
Once that property sold.
Yeah.
If you got nothing that you're holding you back, you know, and yes, even if you just broke even, you know what I mean, and selling your home, you now don't have that. You don't have that like anchor holding you down to buy
Right.
a home. You don't have that persona of like the whoever's now you're trying to buy a home. They're not gonna think, oh well, this guy has a problem with his home first. So like you take that out of the picture, and now you're in the game.
Right. Well, I think a lot of people don't know what to do first because they're like, oh, you know what? I don't want to buy a house or sell my house until I find something that I can get into contract on first, because they know that it's harder as a buyer to find a new home. But the irony is they're going to have a much harder time getting into contract on a new home because they have not yet sold their current property.
Mm-hmm.
And let's agree, it's much easier in this market to sell your house than it is to buy the new one. So I think in order of least lines of resistance, just sell your house. You can stay at my place when you're done.
Is there a bed and breakfast?
Yeah.
I got a couch, so
And
it's not that fancy. Yeah, I got a fireplace.
Yep.
Curl up next to it here.
The other thing you got to remember too is that you put that money down on that contract to buy the house before you sell yours. You're going to be locked into a certain date that you need to be done by. You keep pushing it off. If you keep pissing everybody off, they're going to send that time with the answers letter, and it's a wrap.
Mm-hmm.
You better make sure that everything's done, because if you're getting held up on your sale, and the house you're trying to buy is like, what the hell's going on? They send that letter and they're like, you have a week. Figure it out or you're done. What are you going to do? You know, you gotta, a lot of people they don't know that you can do it together. It's hard. You really got to line things up, but you really have to be picky. Like you really got to sit down with like your clients and be like, listen, I understand you may be getting $20,000 more, but that you're going to lose money if this does not flow correctly. Mm-hmm. Your deposit that you just saved for 4 or 5 years is gone.
Right.
So you need to figure out whether or not you're more worried about getting the extra $10,000, $15,000, $20,000 or losing 36. And that's like the whole, sometimes you just need to be flat, blunt, and just, this is how it is.
Right.
You know, a lot of people get nervous to say it because they're like, I don't want them to get upset with me. I don't want them to lose them and everything else. But you know what? You don't tell them what it is, and it gets down to the point where now
they're going to be more upset with you.
Absolutely.
Yeah. They need to keep it real. They need to keep it real with Joe and Brian. See what I did there?
Oh yeah.
That was good.
Good way, like end note.
Yeah.
You want to use that for a while.
I would like to see which one I could hit.
When we first started this, there's like a whole bunch of like sounds and everything like that. So me and Brian were just going back and forth, just playing different sounds, like little children.
Oh, that's awesome! Yeah, we need a laugh track, all that stuff. It's great.
Next time we have you on, any joke you got,
cut it out.
Yeah, we'll bust those sounds down. But anyway, Greg, honestly, thank you so much for coming out. I'm like, speaking to us.
Thank you very much.
It's cool hanging with you guys.
Yeah, it's definitely a lot of stuff that, like, anyone watching this, it's really good to know. I even learned some stuff. So,
absolutely.
Me too.
Absolutely.
But again, thank you, and keeping it up, real estate. Brian Joe and Greg Nouza.
All your information will be right at the bottom. Please like, subscribe, hit the button, give us thumbs up, kissy faces, everything on the comments.
And again, any questions, comment. Let us know if you have any question, any topic you want us to cover, anyone else you want us to talk to. Just message us and we'll make it happen.
That's it. Listen out there, people. Talk to your loan officers. Get pre-approved and stay pre-approved.
All right. Good
There's a
night.
message from Greg Nouza.
Yeah.
It just sounded good in my head right there. You know?
It has been approved. All right, guys.
Later.
See you.
Yeah, later, guys.